It is my pleasure to kick off the first of today's panel discussions, Bringing Ideas to Life, From Imagination to Action. The panel is made up of Creative Youth Awards review panelists and one of our current awardees. Our review panelists are accomplished folks in their creative field who spend hours reviewing and scoring the CYA submitted work. The panel discussions at today's event are your chance to hear from them. We have lots of discussion queued up for just a brief half hour, but we hope to take a question or two if we have time. The panelists will also be available for your one-on-one questions down in this audience area after the panel concludes. I will kick off the talk by introducing our moderator, Daisy Nam. Daisy Nam is a curator, writer, and lecturer. She is the director and chief curator of the Wattis Institute at the California College of the Arts. She has years of experience organizing exhibitions and programs for arts institutions, including Ballroom Marfa in Texas, Harvard's Carpenter Center for the Visual Arts, and the New Museum in New York. Welcome, Daisy, and welcome, panelists.
Thank you so much, Kirsten and Creative Youth. This is such an important organization, so I'm so happy to be here. So as a curator, I, as Kirsten mentioned, organize shows, but what I really love to do is work with artists, so I'm really happy to be on this panel with 3 artists, and we have such a short period of time, so I'm just going to jump into it. And before we talk about how to create your work, imagination to action, I just wanted to ask the panelists to introduce yourselves. I'm going to look to you, Fred, because you might go first, and just share with the audience what kind of art you make and what was the moment that you knew you were an artist. Are an artist. Present tense.
Frederick, Noland. Visual storyteller. I make graphic novels, comics, animation, graphic notes. And the moment I knew I was an artist is when I was probably 40, and I was like, oh, I literally have no choice. Yeah. Because I just can't not do it. Yes. I'm like, it just, yeah.
Wow, okay. Next, Mariella, do you want to go? Mariella is the youngest artist on our panel, but she has amazing energy, and we can tell that she's going to have a great future, so.
Thank you. My name is Mariella Gutiérrez. I am an animator, 2D animator, illustrator, filmmaker. I make music for my films. I kind of do everything involved in that process, like editing. Just, I guess filmmaker kind of encapsulates it. But I think the first time I realized I was an artist, I can't really pinpoint it. I think I've always just had this need to create, and just whatever I could get my hands on it was definitely drawn all over. So I think, yeah, just from the start.
Hi, everybody. My name is Rafael Flores. I am a screenwriter, director, producer. I'm also a professor of cinema at San Francisco State University. And I'm an executive director of a nonprofit in Oakland called the Hidden Gem Creative Studios. And I was surrounded by artists and activists my entire life. So writing, lots of writing. And I remember just being in 3rd, 4th grade, writing music lyrics. And then eventually, I had to make a decision similar to what Fred was talking about, and just saying, you got to go to college. You got to study something. You got to declare a major of some sort. And I said, well, what could I do for the rest of my life that would not feel like a job? And it was filmmaking. That was how I came into that path. But it wasn't until I was actually accepted into a film school based on the merit of my work of just grabbing a camera and documenting stories that it was validating. And I said, oh, wow, I can actually do this. But it would have never happened if I didn't have people supporting and encouraging me to keep going. So.
Thank you for that. And just to get into the creative process, I wanted to ask the artist, how do you start a project? And maybe you could even go through some details about, do you need a particular space for creation? I know, Rafael, you're a filmmaker, so there's probably lots of people around you. You work with a team, perhaps. So maybe you can share what it means to start a project, what you need to start that project and what you need to keep going. Do you
Sure.
want to go first and then we'll go backwards?
Sounds good. Yeah, I mean, I think it's different for everybody. Everybody has what they call the creative process, right? That's what they teach in graduate schools, MFA programs, and even some undergraduate programs. And you have to start with something that you want to deeply express, that is your vision, that only you can communicate. So I always say that regardless of whatever art form it is, only you can tell that story, because that's your specific worldview, your viewpoint of society and humans and the world that we live in. And I think once you kind of get that moral of the story, that message that you want to tell, that can take shape in so many different mediums and other ways of storytelling. But once you have that, we call that the premise, right? Every work of art has a premise. And you can peel back the layers and you can kind of extract that. That's what you get when you have an experience of consuming or viewing art or listening to art. And so as long as the audience is able to understand that and take that away from your film, then you just go through the standard process of breaking down the idea. You refine it in terms of how you want to structure the story, in terms of space and time. That's usually how I usually think about it. And then, with film in particular, a lot of the time it's a solitary activity, at least when the screenwriting begins, right? It's not until you get into production and start preparing for the production that you're collaborating with creatives. And that takes some time to be able to trust your team, to be able to get the best image or capture the best sound. Because ultimately you're an orchestrator and there's all these different moving parts. And so it's a delicate balance of being able to still have your vision and be true to that and not stray from it, but also to trust other people that they understand that vision that you are articulating to them. And so for me, that is generally speaking how I develop a concept. And I always draw upon my own personal experiences because that's my own worldview and everybody has their own worldview. So be true to yourself. So that's usually how I approach it.
Great. Do you want to go, Mariella?
Yeah. For me, starting a project can be really hard because for me, like when I make anything, it's usually like vibes based in the way it's like more of like a visual thing. So I think just looking at like colors and stuff helps me, or like listening to music often, like I just close my eyes and I get these kind of like visions of like a music video kind of visual to the music that I'm interested in. And I think from there that I'm like, okay, I'm seeing all these colors and all these pictures, but they don't really make any sense and they don't have any like coherence to them. So I guess then I'm like, okay, well, what if? So then I start with all these what ifs of like, okay, well, what if that flower was a person? What if that person went on a walk? But then since they're a flower person, well, what if they started losing their petals and then, you know what I mean? Just, you keep going. But now you have all this what ifs and you don't really know where it ends. So then you start asking why. So you start adding whys to your what ifs. So, well, what if it's like that? Well, why is it like that? And then I think along the line you kind of find an end point where it's like, well, this is why, and it comes full circle. And I think from there, you just start the technical process of making things, which is like probably the most least fun, I guess, because at least for me, when you're animating, it's just like one frame after another frame after another frame. But anyways, out of my personal experience, I think starting a project really just takes like an obsession or like a fixation to just get it started. It's hard for me to just be like thinking about it for a long time because then I get bored of thinking about it. I find other things to think about. So yeah, I don't know.
Do you make work in your room or where do you make work?
I work in my room or in my living room.
Yeah.
On my computer.
Yeah. Because a lot of artists have studio spaces, and so I'm always like curious to hear about a studio space that is just a different area for creativity to happen that's like separate from life. But some artists prefer that. They want to, live in and work in the same space. So I'm always curious about that.
I actually keep a studio space.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah, I have a tiny apartment. For
Yeah.
years, I worked out of my apartment and would have to clean up
Right.
You know, and then like go to bed.
Yeah,
'cause the
and
papers are everywhere.
psychologically. it
Yeah,
can-
so having a place to actually go to
Yeah.
kind of flips a switch for me.
Yeah.
And getting to, sorry, to answer the last question, the way a project starts for me, focusing on just personal projects, not commercial ones, there's usually kind of a signal to noise thing that goes on where I churn a lot, sometimes about things that are creative and mostly about things that suck. So I really try to focus on the creative stuff.
Yeah.
And the signal to noise is just like these ideas will keep coming up and eventually kind of stick. And I
Yeah.
keep sketchbooks, I keep notebooks. I go back through, refer to them, and eventually like an idea will keep bouncing up and coming up and being like, this is something you need to focus on. There's something here. You don't necessarily know what it is.
Yeah.
But it draws you in, and it's like a process of exploring.
Right.
But generally speaking, I just write everything down.
Yeah. I know that you're just finishing a project.
Yes.
Your graphic novel. And so how do you, next question, follow-up, is how do you know when you're done? Because you can, Mariella, you were saying, like, sometimes I get bored, I gotta, like, get into it. So what is a signal, like, when you're done with the project? Because you could work something to death, and then the magic is gone.
When your publisher threatens to sue you.
Deadlines are good. Deadlines are good, and money is good. So. Will you work to the very end? Are you one of these people? That's how I am when I'm writing. Like, they're like, we're gonna take this away from you, you know?
Kind of, yeah, because it's like you want to really, especially with the graphic novel, and it's like, this really big, first big work, I really wanted to make sure like I properly told the story, but you eventually just have to turn it in.
Let it go.
Yeah.
Yeah. When do you know when it's done?
For me, finishing a project is kind of hard because a lot of times I have just so many different ideas that, I start something, I get halfway, but then I hop to a different thing and I'm like, I had a totally better idea than this. What am I even doing? But the best thing that helps me finish things is just having like a plan. Like, what helps, when you're making like an animated thing is to have, even a normal film that's like the camera, is to have like a storyboard of all the things you need. And I just work down the timeline, and I usually set a date to where I have to have it done. Like, I'm gonna have this done in 2 weeks, and if it's not done in 2 weeks, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I have to have it done in 2 weeks. So I think just having like a day that you want to have it done, and a plan, I guess, of production. Like, I think next week I want to have my storyboard done, and a week after that I want to have the score done. Maybe a week later I want to, recruit my voice actors if I need any help. Like, just have like smaller things so that it's not this big thing looming over you, like I have to get this done at some point in my life. You know what I mean? So, yeah, that is my advice.
That's, I think, one of the biggest challenges that I see in a lot of students is finishing the project. And I always tell folks, you can't make everybody happy. If you do that, then you're going to forever be in this cycle of refining. I think that there are practical concerns, especially in the film world. Like, you have a film festival deadline, so you have to make that deadline in order to screen it to the public. But beyond that, I always tell people, this is just one project in a long series of other projects in your career. And you have to build a portfolio. And so you should take your time, obviously polishing it and showing it and doing test screenings, for instance, and gathering feedback from a variety of different sources as much as you possibly can, but take that feedback with a grain of salt, because ultimately at the end of the day, the project needs to communicate what you feel inside. And when I screen my film, like in a test screening for a fine cut, I'm watching the audience. I'm not watching the film. And I'm seeing if the cues that I edited on screen are having the intended emotional impact on the audience, right? And if you see them shift in their chair when that climax happens, or if they, here's a big one. If they go, you're not doing your job.
Edit that out.
You're not doing your job, right? You want to keep them on the edge of your seat, right? And so I think that, when you see that desired response in your audience, then you know, okay, finally, now I can rest. But I think the other thing, especially nowadays with technology, right, and marketing, is that just because you finished your work of art doesn't mean that your job is done. Now you have to go speak about your art. And I always argue that, articulating and speaking about your work is just as important as the work itself. And that's what you're doing when you're marketing your film. You're building your audience and cultivating your audience, and then they'll ask you, what's next? And so you always have to have that in your back pocket ready to go. So the job isn't done once you finish, but you need to finish so that you can continue creating more work, because that's your job as an artist.
That actually leads into my other question about audience. And, for me, my job as a curator is to help an artist with their exhibition or their project and connect it with an audience. Because, that phrase, like, if a tree falls in a forest and no one hears, like, did it happen? And so an audience is so important to the work process. And I wanted to ask each of you when, maybe not the first time, but maybe the first meaningful time you presented a work and it really connected with an audience, and maybe you can just recount like what that was, what the project was, what it felt like, how you did it. I don't know, Rafael, do you want to go first?
Sure.
You were just talking about that.
Sure. I remember that moment very
Yeah.
clearly. I think it was my first film in my MFA program that I had made. And I took it was a mini DV tape camera, so it's old school, right, before digital. And I go out into East Oakland and I'm filming the Scraper Bike King crew, right? And so it's these homemade, kind of like lowrider bikes, but they're like scrappy bikes in East Oakland. And I was just curious. I saw this YouTube video and I take my camera and I just was like, I don't know anybody here. I'm going to deep East Oakland. I'm going to get my camera and I'm just going to start interviewing people. And at first they're looking at you like, who is this guy with this camera? Like, what's going on here? But you just don't take no for an answer, right? And you keep on filming, and eventually they warm up to you and they start talking to the camera, and then you have this wonderful material, right? And then you go back with the team and you film on 16 millimeter cameras in deep East Oakland, right? And we have this amazing footage. It's a hodgepodge of different formats and mediums, but you edit it all together. And I remember the first film festival I went to was in the Lower East Side of Manhattan in New York. So I have barely any money, and I fly out to New York, and I'm thinking nobody's gonna be at this screening. Who wants to see my short film about bicycles? Like nobody wants to see this. There was a line around the block to see not just my film, but other films, short films as well. And they're scalping tickets to get into the screening, and then you get into the screening and it's packed. And you're like, oh my God, this is what a film festival experience really is like. And you get hooked on it. And it's that moment you say, I gotta keep on making more. I gotta keep making more. But to date, I think that documentary probably traveled more around the world than I have ever traveled, right? And so you look back at that work and you also look at everything with a grain of salt and you say, oh my God, I've become such a better artist since then, right? You criticize your own work, of course. But yes, again, every project is just you becoming better and better as an artist, and you see it in your work, and then you become proud, and you say, you know what? I'm glad I took that risk. I'm glad that I'm continuing to learn and continuing to stay on top of technological trends and artistic trends, because you can't be outdated, right?
Yeah. What about you, Mariella? Your first exhibition, have you exhibited your work?
I've exhibited a few things at like film showcases or, in front of audiences and stuff. But I think for me, the most important time when I'm showing anything to anybody is probably when I'm just showing my film to my family before I share it anywhere. Because I always have this like big stress that they're gonna hate it, and that I don't know, that it's gonna be embarrassing, and oh, you spent so much time on it and it's not good or whatever. But most of the time when I show my family, they really like what I make, and I think that's one of the most meaningful things, because it makes me think, well, if my family liked it and I was convinced they weren't going to like it, I'm not even worried about the audience, because I realize that no matter what I make, there's going to be people out there that like it, and if they don't like it, it doesn't really affect me. So I think it's important to just check in with people that you care about, obviously, and be like, make sure they support you, but also know that if they really care about you, they're going to support you, and also that the audience isn't everything. I think a lot about art is just putting yourself out there, and no matter how weird or wacky or freakish or zany it's going to be, there's going to be an audience for you. There's going to be your niche. There's going to be somebody that says, this is my favorite thing in the world. I watch it every day before I go to bed, or something like that. So I'd say, yeah, I think my favorite audience and most scary audience is maybe my family. Yeah.
because they're the most close to you, and so it's probably really meaningful for them too. Fred, what about you? Because your audience are readers. Yeah.
Well, this is probably bad, but I don't really make work with an audience in mind. Like, I'm really trying to be true to the subject and to the characters in the books. But to the when I've seen a work really connect with an audience is it was for years and years. I did comics that really kind of dared people to like them. Like, they really tried to challenge people, like the way like that I was like some comics Godard or something, just like, oh, this is over your head.
Yeah.
But it was just really just weird stuff. And then one day I did work for an anthology, and anthologies were always fun for me because they're themed, you know, so you don't have to like rack your brains for like, what am I going to write about? It's going to kind of shake out unto itself. And the theme was a cringeworthy memory. So immediately I go to school.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, what's cringeworthy that I'll actually talk about? And I went back to, I just remembered, I was like, oh, I don't have to make it like embarrassing. Like, there was this really great time when I was in first grade. My mother bought me a Crayola 64 set. And, you know, with technology now, I'm sure they're up to 500 colors or something. But this was 1980. And, you know, I put together this comic, and it has kind of a sad ending to it, but, you know, a poignant ending. And people, like, nobody writes anymore, nobody emails anymore. People wrote me, and they're just like, wow. Like, and it's this very specific thing, this really specific thing that I went through, but making something very specific, it makes it, in a weird way, more able to connect with people. Because they're just like, this is a very real experience. I can like really put myself in your shoes, even though, you know, I'm not you.
Yeah.
So it's a really good way to get an audience to buy into what you're creating.
Right. Yeah. We talked a little bit about changes in technology, and I was wondering if, just to pivot a little bit, there are so many changes that are happening today with AI and various other things, but I think art will always remain. And I know that artist Mariella, what you were saying, like all these questions that you ask, like are always problem solvers. And so I was curious to hear your thoughts about the future of art making in your own medium and in your own practice, and how you kind of are thinking about it, or maybe not thinking about it. It's hard not to, though. Yeah, maybe you should start.
If AI wants to make comics, good luck.
Yeah.
Like, maybe it'll be fine because it's a computer and they can spend, you know, 60 hours a week alone plugging away at a page. But I don't make art because it's profitable, and I don't make art because like there's some technology that makes it possible for me. Cavemen didn't make art because of anything. They made art to express themselves. And so I don't really think about AI in that way. I think it just doesn't concern me. You know, I'm always going to do what I do. I'm always going to have some creative outlet. And I think like a true artist doesn't really get hung up on those things. Mm-hmm. Like if you're a real creator, you have to create. It's going to come out. So
I think that AI sucks and it's stupid. And I think anybody actually thinking that it's going to replace artists at all is just, you guys, like those kind of people aggravate me. I think just as a public, people have already tried to make AI films. Nobody watches them. Nobody wants to watch that crap. It's just not interesting. It doesn't have any heart. Humans respect the process of making art. Because if there is no process to making it, there's no value to it. If I just like sit down and I'm just like, oh, I'm gonna generate this, that doesn't really tell you anything about me. It doesn't really like say anything about me as an artist. You're not really an artist if you do that, by the way. But yeah, I think it's ridiculous to think it's gonna totally replace it. But it is important that we do get protections against it, because as much as the public and the audience does not like it, executives and stuff are still convinced that they should be using it and that it's important or whatever. Like, I know that the Animators Guild is still trying to get protections against AI. The SAG-AFTRA is still trying to get protections against AI. And the movie industry and just the art industry is completely pushing back. So it's like we still need to stand up for ourselves, even though we know that, you know, we're in the right. People, money-hungry people are still gonna try and, you know, take a bite out of us, even if it's not gonna benefit them in the long run. So yeah, just stand with artists, don't support AI, yeah, don't generate cards for your friends and stuff. Anyways, yeah.
Woo!
I have two different hats on this. I have the professor hat and then I have the creative filmmaker hat on this, and I've heard a lot of different perspectives on it. AI is a tool like anything else. I don't think we should fear it, but I don't think we should completely rely on it either for innovation, because it's designed to simply source what's already existed, right? I always tell filmmakers, if the idea's been done, why are you going to do it? Right? There's no innovation there. And so you could reapproach something in maybe a different angle perhaps, right? Or you can adapt something, sure. But ultimately, why do we go consume art? It's because we want to feel emotion, and I would argue that a human being understands emotion more than any computer or algorithm would. Now, until robots evolve to the point where they're operating our cameras for us and they're setting up the lights, I don't really see us being replaced, at least in the film industry. Where I do see it helpful is maybe generation of storyboarding. For instance, I've seen a lot of students do that, and I think they're phenomenal examples, because ultimately your storyboard isn't what the film will ultimately be. It's never exactly how you plan it to be. But then you have the other component of it. As a director, I'm having to work with actors, right? And I can't rely on AI to give me my director's notes on how to elicit a certain performance on screen that's real. And I think that's ultimately what resonates with an audience when we see a film, is we see a real emotion on screen. Now we're completely enthralled and engaged in what we're seeing on screen. And that's the best type of viewing experience for an audience member. So I don't see us being replaced anytime soon. Not yet. Maybe technology will get there eventually, but I think we're always going to have innovative stories. And again, we're going to drop on our own personal experiences, and that's what resonates with humans. So.
Yeah. So for the last question, I know we have to save time for questions for the audience, but being an artist, it is really tough, and you've given so many good advice to this audience here. How do you make money? Because that's kind of a taboo subject in making art. So how do you survive in the world? You were talking about commercial work. And so maybe one last, advice point for this audience, like how do you actually make a living being an artist?
Hustle.
What did you say?
Hustle.
Hustle, yes. Gotta hustle, always.
We only have a minute, so I guess I'll be quick. If you're a youth artist and you are looking for work, there's probably a lot of internships and small job opportunities out there that are just waiting for you. They're just in like the back alleys. It's very hard to find sometimes. You just have to work through a network of people. I'd also say that just offer your work to people, or offer oh, hey, do you want me to draw you? Or, hey, do you need an ad? Do you need a film? Do you need anything? And slowly people will start, knowing your name and being like, you'll be the first person in their mind when they think, oh, I need a film. Who do I know that makes films? Oh, I'm going to call Mariella. I'm going to text Mariella about this. I'm going to offer this to Mariella. So I think just slowly building a network of people. So yeah.
I think you got to learn your audience. There's so many platforms out there now to distribute your work. And I think that, you always develop a marketable skill set. Because ultimately, if somebody comes to you, oh, you make that kind of art? Cool, I want to hire you to work on something. So as many marketable skill sets that you can develop, the more money you're going to make, because you'll have more opportunities and different income streams, right? But also publishing is very important. Knowing how to protect your copyright and your intellectual property is fundamental. So just really study up on that. And a lot of that you have to teach yourself. And yes, no school will teach you that. So you have to go out there and learn by experience and not be afraid to make mistakes.
Yeah. Great advice. Okay, so I think we have one question.
Yeah, I think we have time for one question. This has been amazing.
The burning question.
Great. I will take one question and bring the mic to you if anyone has a question.
Hi, my name's John. I've been with the foundation for a while. I'm very interested in the work ethic aspect of this. There are, in all forms of creativity or personal skill sets, right? There's that 10,000 hour thing. And how have each of you approached that aspect of work ethic, not getting distracted by the next project or creativity or other things that come into your mind? How do you steel yourself to that discipline of working through something to become an expert in your field?
Great question. Work ethic.
Ethic. Well, one thing that I tell my students a lot is don't waste your boredom, because if you were born and existed before the internet and all that stuff, you got bored, and a lot came out of that. And I still love just getting bored and letting my mind wander. That's not exactly work ethic, but that's one of the things that gets you into a mode where you're going to work, is just allowing yourself to rest. That's extremely important. As far as work ethic goes, you really have to set actual time aside, not be somebody who's okay, I'm going to make work whenever I get around to it. You have to, if you can't have a space, it's good to have an hour or a day or even a half hour. This is when I used to commute to work, I would always bring a sketchbook with me because that was time that I could spend being creative. So yeah, just setting time aside, having actual space that you dedicate to your practice is extremely important.
I think work ethic is really important. Just as a mindset of always trying to get better and do bigger projects and stuff. At least for me, I know that I don't have the most healthy work ethic, but I get stuff done. I usually do everything in 3 weeks, and it's just all-nighters all the time. But I think it's just the drive that I need to get this done. I need to be better. I need to go bigger. I need to keep improving. I guess that's a good work ethic. That, I guess, is my advice, is always try and improve yourself. Never plateau and just be this is me, this is what I do, and I'm going to stay in this niche forever. Always try and go out of your comfort zone. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that creative space in your brain is a muscle, right? And you have to exercise it like anything else. And I think work ethic, I mean, my work ethic kicks in when I see Instagram or social media and I see my colleagues producing amazing art, and I say, I better get on it, because if I don't do it, somebody else is going to make it, right? So, I mean, that's what keeps me focused and grounded. But I think creating the space and that little voice in the back of your head, whoever it may be, for me, it's my father, just telling me, hey, you better go write that, you better hurry up. That never goes away, so don't lose that, because that's what's going to keep driving you forward. And if you do what you love, money will follow. You just have to work really hard at it. That's all.
Thank you so much for such an incredible panel. I think Kirsten's going to say a few words.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. This has been an amazing panel. I hope that you all received, like I did, a few nuggets of wisdom from our great panelists. Like I said, mentioned earlier, our panelists are available for one-on-one questions after they leave the stage. But there's also a lot going on in the event for you to experience. Meanwhile, big round of applause for these amazing panelists, for being here, for reviewing student work, for creating. We loved all those thoughts. Thank you.